Well, hello guys. This is Ariel, new DM Ariel once again. Sorry, I have to apologize for a lack of videos last week. I wasn't really up. Took a break, took a week off from uploading content, not because I wanted to so much, but because had some software related issues again. So, but we're back, and maybe I'll make up for it this week by having uploading a couple of additional videos, having some extra content. We'll see about how that works out. But today, what I wanted to do was to have a discussion on the on fourth edition Dungeons and Dragons. There is a bit of a renaissance. Going back to the character classes in Dungeons and Dragons, there's a bit of a renaissance going on right now with fourth edition, which I find as I hold up my copy of the Player's Handbook, and which I got over 10 years ago now. And I find it really interesting that there's quite a bit of a renaissance happening with that edition of the game because, as I stated in the past, that was a very maligned edition of Dungeons and Dragons for a lot of different factors, which didn't necessarily agree with. I think it's a great system, and I got some of the supplements, all the core books and some of the supplements. And I'm glad to see that it's experiencing a bit of a renaissance, if you will, in the wake of the popularity of both fifth edition and Wizards of the Coast after acquiring Dungeons and Dragons and making the brand pretty popular once again. Okay, so the idea for this video originated when I was actually comparing the different systems of magic. I wanted to see if there was a huge difference between the way fifth edition 5e handled the magic users and spellcasters versus other editions, earlier editions of the game, specifically fourth edition, because I was looking to get into a fourth edition campaign maybe, or to run a fourth edition campaign. So I had to understand the rules of magic because I don't really usually, as a player, I don't really gravitate towards casters too much. To be honest, I mean, if you've kind of followed some of my earlier discussions, I'm more of a melee type, um, you know, upfront fighter type, barbarian type. Those are the um, character classes that I prefer playing that I find most enjoyment. Bashing, being a dwarf or a fighter and bashing a monster on the head. It's pretty uh should say satisfying. Not that the wizards or the spellcasters or the magic users are not uh, fun to play. They are. I mean, I played them in Dungeons and Dragons Online, but I digress. Actually, interestingly enough, in the last fourth edition campaign that I was playing in several years ago, I was playing a cleric, and I found that to be um, really cool. And I looked through the player's guide, and I haven't had a chance to look through the Dungeon Master's guides or any other core supplements or core books. I couldn't really find a chapter dedicated to Magic the way they have it in fifth edition. Um, Looking through the player's handbook right now, actually, and there is they go into the character creation, character classes, skills, all that stuff, adventuring and combat, but there doesn't seem to be, and rituals, like the very last um, chapter is dedicated to rituals. But other than that, there doesn't seem to be a um, a chapter dedicated to just spellcasting or the rules of magic like they have in fifth edition or even third edition, which is kind of interesting. All right, guys, let's talk about the cleric. But before we do that, real quick, the one difference that people who aren't that familiar or never played the fourth edition rule set is that there's the different levels or tiers of attacks and powers. Every class gives you access to attack powers you can use to harm or hinder the enemies, and utility powers that help you and your allies. According to the player's handbook powers, in each of those broad categories are further divided by how often you can use them. So you can use willpowers as often as you like. You can use encounter powers many times during a day of adventuring, but you have to rest a few minutes between each use so you can use them um, once per encounter. And then you have your daily powers, which are the most powerful. They're so dramatic that you can use them only once a day. And we need to keep that in mind when it comes to uh, fourth edition classes, because that is something that is unique to this rule set that we didn't have in the past. And of course, some people whine about it or complain that it's too much catering to the video game crowd, and there's some similarities there. But you have to take it with a grain of salt, and you have to remember this was about 2008, 2009 when this rule set was released. And yes, they were trying to cater to some of the World of Warcraft players. Why not? I mean, they're trying to appeal to have a wide mass appeal, but also to direct some of those niche players who were not into tabletop gaming because they had either abandoned the hobby for video game um, or MMOs like Warcraft. I remember there was even a Lord of the Rings online MMO that was very popular, and I really liked it. I was playing that back in the day around the same time I was playing Dungeons and Dragons online. So anyway, the cleric uh, turn to the cleric information and what the book says. Basically, the class traits are the role is of a cleric is a leader. You lead by shielding allies with your prayers, healing, and using power that improve your allies' attack. The power source is divine. You have been invested with the authority to wield divine power on behalf of a deity, faith, or philosophy. And the key abilities are wisdom, strength, and charisma. So this is interesting. Right off the bat, they tell you there's another difference in fourth edition where they try to kind of peg or categorize each type of class. So into like different roles, like you had your striker and you had your leader and you had your whatever role they played within the party structure, which we hadn't really seen before, or it hasn't hadn't really been emphasized. And the different magic users were all further categorized into their power source, with the clerics being under the umbrella of the divine power source, which meant that, as it says on the book, their power is derived from faith or philosophy or following a specific deity, which might be different from a wizard or a sorcerer or magic user, which derive their magical abilities from other power sources. So was it a powerful character? Well, you get not really. I mean, you get 12 hit points at first level, and you get it gets added, proficiency or bonuses rather, depending on the Constitution score, and then you get 5 hit points per level after you gain a level. And then there was something called healing surges in fourth edition, but I think they carried over to fifth edition, which allows you to heal your character. But that's the whole role of the cleric. Is even in DDO and MMOs traditionally. On role-playing games, the cleric is added to the party so that you can heal. Or one of the main abilities is for them to heal their their different party members or allies. Um, and then some of the cleric powers at level 1, they get at will prayers. So they get stuff like Lance of Faith and Priest Shield and Righteous Brand and Sacred Flame. So you can't really do much at level 1. Um, but that's a fairly good amount of at will prayers, which are again these powers you can use anytime. You don't have to rest in between using them. You can use them as often as you want. There's actually an article that was one of those kind of parody type funny websites that my one of my players sent to me, and it was kind of a little raunchy, and it said something along the lines that um, uh, you had a party member who was using magic hand in order to assist another player. Magic hand, get it? Ha ha ha! But I looked it up and they said, well, the fortunate. The article went on to say that the fortunate thing was that they were only able to. They had to take a rest or pause and rest in between before they could use it. So it's not. So they were trying to allude the fact that it's not like an at will power where you can use it anytime, which is totally wrong. And I pointed this out. I was like, well, if they're playing fifth edition, then I know that it would be considered well, not specifically just the cleric, but any magic user that's using um that type of power would be able to use it as a cantrip, so they don't really have to rest in between. But anyway, I digress. I'm sorry. Level one, the cleric, they get the encounter prayers. There's a fairly good amount, and then their level one daily prayers are pretty powerful. They have an avenging flame, a beacon of hope, a cascade of light, and a guardian of faith. For example, guardian of faith is you conjure up a ghostly guardian, indistinct except for a glowing shield emblazoned with your deity's symbol. A burst of radiance erupts from it to sear foes that move next to it. So the effect is basically conjure up this creature that occupies multiple squares within range, and each round you can move the guardian 3 squares as a move action. This effect lasts until the end of the encounter. So this is kind of a very powerful creature that you can summon basically to help you fight. And that's another knock on some people don't really like the fourth edition is uh, a description of this cleric attack, first level attack, they're talking about squares, right? And what they mean when they talk about squares, they're talking about the grid. So one of the things that people didn't really specifically like about fourth edition was the fact that it seemed to be heavy on the tactics, and so you almost had to was required for you to use what they call a battle grid, like a map made of like squares, and then you could move X number of squares with your miniature. So people are saying, well, it's not. Is it really role playing? It's more of a tactical game because you got to use the maps. You gotta move your miniatures. You almost required to use miniatures. And I understand that criticism, but again, I think if the DM is good, they can incorporate the battle sequence into your role playing and make it a seamless transition. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be all about battles. You could have an adventure, and then you can describe what's going on within your game world and have some interaction with PCs, and then you have a battle, and then yeah, you can break out the grid if you want to and follow this instructions on the squares. But nothing in the rule set says that you specifically have to play that way. That's just a style that's within the rule set that's available to you. All right, guys. The next spelling class or spellcasting class is the wizard. For fourth edition, basically the wizard is a controller in fourth edition, meaning that's the role they play. They control, exert control through magical effects that cover large areas, sometimes hindering their foes and sometimes consuming them with fire. It says. So the power source is arcane. So we looked at the cleric, which is divine. The wizard power source is arcane, so they're able to channel arcane forces through extensive study, hidden knowledge, and intricate preparation. To the wizard, magic is an art form, an expressive, powerful method by which you seek to control the world around you. The key abilities are intelligence, wisdom, and dexterity, and they have armor proficiency with cloth and weapon proficiencies with a dagger and a quarterstaff. And the bonus to a defense is a +2 on will. Hit points at first level are 10 plus the Constitution score, and they gain 4 hit points per level. So even squishier, which is what we like to say, the squishy class, they wear cloth armor. They don't really wear armor as we've discussed in the past with 3.5 character classes because that would hinder their spellcasting abilities. You have to, if you have a somatic component to a spell, as they say, you gotta move your hands and all that stuff. Just make gestures and all that good stuff. And if you're wearing armor, obviously you're not gonna have an easy time doing that. So their train skill is Arcana from the class skill from a class skills that they can choose from, and the at first level the class skills are Arcana, Diplomacy, Dungeoneering, History, Insight, and Nature. The interesting thing about fourth edition, one of the interesting things about it about the spellcasters in fourth edition is the wizards. Um, Being from arcane magic and tapping into the power that permeates through the cosmos, they study. They kind of like have to research. It comes to them through like they actually go through learning the spells. And there's different types. There's the control wizard, or you could play a war wizard. Basically, a control wizard is um, your powers restrict enemies in various ways. You crush them with the coiled lightning serpent, or trap them with in a cloud of noxious vapor. So basically, they suggest you have a feat of improved initiative and arcana, diplomacy, and insight nature. Versus the war wizard. The war wizard is basically you like the powers that deal damage, lots of damage, a lot of foes at a time. So you're thinking, you know, an expanded spell book and suggested skills of Arcana. The book says Dungeoneering, History, and Religion. And their suggested at will powers are Magic Missile and Scorching Burst. So Magic Missile is a at will power ability, meaning you pretty much learn it once and you don't forget it. You can use it anytime you want, and you don't need to rest. I was talking about the article got it wrong in the sense that in fourth edition, for at will powers, you don't really need to rest in a long period of time to cast. You can just cast them over and over without any rest. Um, so let's see. Your powers are all about affecting and multiple targets at the same time. Sometimes two or three foes, sometimes everyone in a room. In terms of religion, the wizards favor the deities of magic, of course, art, knowledge, and secrets, such as Corellon, Lowen, and Vecna. And the races can be Eladrin, humans, half elves, and those are like the preferred races for wizards, I guess. Talk about the cantrips, basic cantrips. This is the same as in previous editions of Dungeons and Dragons, where cantrips are minor spells that you gain at the first level, and you gain ghost, sound, light, magic hand. There's the magic hand, and prestidigitation, which are at will powers. So for mage hand, for example, it's an at will power, which you gesture towards an object nearby, and a spectral floating hand lifts the object into the air and moves it wherever you wish. So that's considered a minor action in D&D Fourth Edition, and it has a range of 5, and it's basically a wizard cantrip, among many. At level 1, you get the level 1 at will spells. You gain stuff like Cloud of Daggers, Magic Missile, which is an all-time favorite, Ray of Frost, Scorching Burst, and Thunder Wave. And then for your encounter spells, you get Burning Hands, Chill Strike, Force Orb, Icy Terrain, and Ray of Enfeeblement. You don't get all of these. You have to select a number of spells, and then you can use those. The more powerful for ones, of course, are like the daily spells like Flaming Sphere, Freezing Cloud, Sleep, um, and then you have some utility spells that are also at your disposal. All right, the final spellcasting class is the Warlock. Um, um, and one difference, we already talked about the different roles in fourth edition versus all the other editions of Dungeons and Dragons. But the Warlock has the role of a striker. So your attack powers are highly damaging and often weaken or hamper the target in some way. And you can elude attacks by flying, teleporting, or turning invincible. And the power source is also arcane, like the wizard. You gain your magical power from a pact. The difference is, unlike the wizard, the warlock gains magical powers from a pact they forge with a powerful supernatural force on an unnamed entity. So you think, well, wizard or the cleric actually uh, has a divine power source. So they worship or they answer to a specific deity, and there's a list of deities in fourth edition that are available for that purpose. But in the warlock, the difference is that they're more, even though they're not divine, they're arcane. They gain their power from powerful forces or making up a pact. A pact with the devil is uh, you know a science fiction trope that everybody's familiar with. So, but this isn't necessarily the same thing because when the warlock makes a pact or forges an alliance to the powerful entity, they don't necessarily surrender their soul or anything like that. They're more likely to be honing in or tapping into that source of power, the arcane power from this unnamed entity or force. The key abilities for the warlock are charisma, constitution, and intelligence. Of course, the armor proficiency is the same as the wizard in terms of a cloth, but they also can wear leather, which is different. Weapon proficiencies are simple melee and simple range weapons. Um, they have implements like rods and wands, and so they get a bonus to defense of +1, and a +1 to +1 reflex and +1 will is their bonus to defense. And hit points at first level are a little bit higher. They got 12 plus their Constitution score, and then hit points every level. They gain 5 hit points every level after that they level up. And they also get 6 healing surges per day plus their constitution modifier. Okay. From the train skills, from the class, they can choose to train the skills at first levels in Arcana, Bluff, History, Insight, Intimidate, Religion, Streetwise, and Thievery, which is a dexterity base skill. And uh, they have different types of build. The build options are the Deceptive Warlock or the Scourge Warlock. Go away. So, was I saying? Different types. Deceptive Warlock. Okay, basically the difference is the Deceptive Warlock prefers spells that deal a little less damage, but that inflict a variety of penalties and negative conditions on their foes. So they rather fight at range and avoid getting caught in close-up battles. Um, Most of their attacks depend on charisma, so that should have a high score in charisma. And then the book suggests a feat of improved Misty Step for and if but if you're a human, you can choose a human feat, which is human perseverance. They suggest Arcana, Bluff, Insight, and Thievery, and their suggested at will powers are Eldritch Blast and Eye Bite. The suggested encounter power is a Witchfire, and the suggested daily power is the Curse of the Dark Dream. The Scourge Warlock is basically if you want to deal damage. It's not really subtle class at all. You're tougher than the Deceptive Warlock, and you got powers to help you attack and defending melee, as well as excellent range attacks. Your best attack powers depend on your Constitution score, so that has to be the best score on the character. And then they can choose Intelligence as the second best trait because it provides special bonuses to many powers and improves the reflex defense, the AC, all that sort of stuff. So charisma is clearly the third choice. So you for your first choice there, if you're gonna play the Scourge Warlock, Constitution followed by Intelligence followed by Charisma. Okay, and they suggest a feat of improved Dark One's Blessing. Um, So at level 1, they get at will spells, a whole bunch to choose from. Eye bite is recommended. You glare at your enemy, and your enemies briefly gleam with brilliant colors, and your foe reels under your mental assault, and you finish him from his sight. So that's one thing there. And then the encounter spells, you got stuff like Witch Fire, which they recommend. It's from the mystic energy of the Feywild, which is the land of the elves. You draw a brilliant white flame and set it in your enemy's mind and body. And they also have Vampiric Embrace, which means that it's basically an infernal warlock attack where a ribbon of twisting darkness streams from your hand to your target's heart, feeding on his vital force as you grow stronger. So you basically kind of vampiric snacking on their heart, which is doesn't sound that good. Um, then they have level 1 daily spells, which are pretty powerful spells. They suggest the Curse of the Dark Dream as one. Basically, you inflict a waking nightmare upon your enemy so that he can no longer tell what is real and what exists on his mind. Under the influence of the spells, he staggers around trying to avoid falling from imaginary height or stepping on unreal serpents. Pretty powerful illusionary uh, illusion type dreamlike state that you can put your enemy in, so as you can see, I mean, that's just like level 1 stuff. I mean, as you go up in levels, there are um, a number of utility and daily spells that are pretty powerful. Now, we haven't really talked about the different paths. One structure of fourth edition, which is different from previous editions of the game, is that they split up the character progression that goes into paths. So something like level 1 to 30, and then if you go up to, I think it's past level 30, or when you're starting on level 30, you go into something that they call a paragon path, and that gives you like more increased spells and abilities, and then it's just a different type of progression. But I mean, you kind of get your character advancement goes from level 1 to level 30, and that's they break it down. And let's see if I get the 3 tiers. The heroic tier is like you're a hero, and that goes all the way up to level, I believe it's level 10. And then after that, you go into the Paragon tier, which starts around 11th level. So from the 11th level on, now you're gonna need to get 26,000 experience points just to get to 11th level. But you go on your Paragon path, and so your at will, all your abilities, your at will, your encounter, and your daily and your utilities all increase. Um, and then the final one is the what's the final one? It's called the epic tier. Yeah, so the epic tier you start at level 21 and it goes all the way up to 30. And so the epic tier, you get even more powerful. By the time you reach the epic tier, your character's capabilities are truly super heroic. Your class still determines most of your abilities, but your most dramatic powers come from your choice of epic destiny, which you select at the 21st level. So you select an epic destiny and you follow that path. In a way, Dungeons and Dragons Online sort of has similar. It follows the similar uh, character progression because you get into these epic characters, and I think that's something that they brought forward after fourth edition because Dungeons and Dragons Online, D&D Online is actually based on 3.5 rule set, but it wasn't too long after that fourth edition came out, and so they incorporated some of these ideas um, uh, into the game mechanics. Okay, guys, I think that's all we have for today. This video is getting a little bit on the longer side, and so there's other supplements to fourth edition other than the player's handbook and the core books. So if you get the book on our divine powers, for example, where they might specify more classes, different types of spellcasters. I do have a fourth edition um, Eberron campaign book, so I might take a look at if they have Eberron's kind of more
magic mixed with steampunk. So I don't know if they have I don't remember off the top of my head how many class. I know that they have the Warforge, but that's more of a kind of like a construct, sort of like a living construct. But they do have elves, some of the drow elves, and more of the dark themed elves in D&D. So I'll take a look at those and see the other supplements, and see if there are other spellcasters that I haven't touched upon here. But this is kind of just like an introduction and a comparison, comparing and contrasting, if you will, fourth edition spellcasting and magic rules versus the fifth edition. And what I'm finding out is that the fourth edition rules are very similar to the 3.5 magic rules, except for they tweaked it a little bit so that they, some of the differences that we went over, like the role, which they didn't really have emphasized in third edition, like being a striker versus being a leader. And it doesn't make that much change in the game, other than maybe if you're doing tactical battles, like who has initiative, like who goes first, and if you have a range class like a wizard, you're probably gonna be in the back, sort of shooting spells, shooting arcane divine magic, and you're not really up front fighting. That's one difference. The other difference from third edition is that you do have your different set of power. You have your, like we talked about before, with the dailies and the utilities, and the type of spells that you can use. I see the fifth edition, for example, the current edition of Dungeons and Dragons, I think third edition was similar, although I'm not 100% sure. But I think the way it works is they have the different spells. So you have uh, the older editions for sure, level 0 level, all the way up to like the 9th or 10th level spells, which are your more powerful spells. And these levels don't necessarily correspond with the character levels. So you could be a 4th level wizard, but have a higher spell range. And when you prepare your spells, then on your spell book you will have how many level 1 spells you can have, how many level 2 spells, how many level 3 spells you have access to. But in fourth edition, it works a little bit different, because you have the as you gain your spell. I mean, as you progress in your levels, I should say, as you progress levels, then you get um, more powerful, a wider range of more powerful spells to choose from, as we saw in some of the explanations of the various classes. Okay, well, that's it for today, guys. Thank you for watching this video and sticking to the end. If you like this content and you want to see more, go ahead and like and subscribe. And like I said before, I will try to make up for some of the lost time by maybe getting an extra bit of content here and there this week. So peace.